Welcome to part 2 of our 2-part video workshop on resumes for graduate students and postdocs at Penn. We are creating these videos to give you some best practices, advice, and action steps you can take as you are progressing through the job search process. This is a great resource to use before scheduling an appointment with an advisor at Career Services to get a review of your resume. Here's what we're going to cover today. You can get more information on all these topics from the Career Services website, and I've shared some links to some of our online resources in the description section below this video. If you happen to have a quick emailable question about anything that I'm covering in this video, and if you are a Penn student, postdoc, or alum with an active Handshake account, then you're welcome to email me directly. Just use this as your subject line, and I will respond with an answer, and with additional encouragement to schedule an appointment with us. Your resume is a two-dimensional version of your best professional self that introduces the reader to you, showcases the skills and experiences that you have, and points out the successes that you've achieved in your research and work. Effective resume formatting ensures that you come across to a future employer in the best light possible. So not the casual, day-to-day graduate student look that's fine for most of the semester, but the professional version of yourself that you hope to showcase to an employer that demonstrates the value that you can bring in terms of your skills, knowledge, and experience. In terms of formatting your resume, you want to spend as much time as necessary getting your formatting right so that no one ever notices it. That may sound strange, I know, but it's the content that tells your story. Good content will be seen less positively if you have poor formatting. And while no one will invite you to an interview based only on how your resume looks, they may decide not to invite you if your resume looks terrible. In order for us to focus on resume formatting, it'll be helpful for you to print out a copy or pull up your most recent draft on your computer. Go ahead and pause this video and come back when you have found one. What we can do first is to take a look at the curb appeal of your resume. This represents the thoughts that our hiring manager might have when they first take a look at your resume before they even start reading your content. Go ahead and hold your printout at arm's length, or shrink your electronic version down so you can get the whole resume on one page. Taking your Word or PDF version down to 60% is usually good enough. When you're not reading the actual words, what do you notice when you look at your resume? Have you crammed so much text onto one page by getting rid of your margins and shrinking your font size down to an unreadable level because you've heard that resumes have to be one page, so that it feels like you're hacking away through a bug-filled jungle swamp like this? Or have you spaced your text appropriately so that it's easy to read, easy to see the different sections, and easy to identify relevant information, making it feel much more like a stroll through a tree-lined avenue with a summer breeze blowing through your hair? If your document is littered with formatting errors and inconsistencies with font size, margins, spacing, and so on, it will be hard for any hiring manager to get excited about you as a candidate. If a 1 to 2 page document that is meant to represent you at your best shows poor attention to detail, what does that say about the quality of work you'll bring to your new role? And I bet you didn't even notice the donkey here. Think about how your text is positioned on the page. Do you have content on the left, content on the right, but not much in the middle? This can suggest that you are not using your space as efficiently as possible. It might also mean that your bullet points are not robust enough. Anytime you have a 6-word or half-line bullet point, the chances are higher that you're not communicating your skills in a way that allows the reader to really picture them in action. Use the horizontal space to your advantage. Do you have a single column or 2 columns? The easiest way to control the narrative of your resume is to have a single column. You can prioritize key information in the first half, and there's only one way for the reader to navigate through the document. It's harder to do this when you have multiple columns, where the reader might give less priority to the information on one side of the page, or even miss it altogether. Putting your dates first, and on the left-hand side of the page, prioritizes when you did things over what you actually did. While dates are important to include in a resume, consider shifting them to the right side of the page so that you can prioritize what you have done over when you did it. Another common error with the dates is having inconsistent formatting. Take a look at your resume and see how many variations of the hyphen you have for your dates. I'm sure that you'll find a couple of different versions. Some jobs actually list attention to detail as a preferred skill, and so even a small issue like this could be spotted by a hiring manager. And if you are trying to take full advantage of your horizontal space on the page, take a look at how these small changes can minimize the amount of space your dates take up. And if you are having trouble getting the dates to line up nicely on the right-hand side of the page like this, then make sure that you're using the tab feature in Word. Click on the paragraph section and then select tabs in the bottom left corner, at least in my version. You can then set the point where you want the text to be right aligned. This will give you nice clean edges for the dates on your resume. In general terms, consistent formatting that doesn't get in the way of the content is always the best approach to take with a resume. Trying to over-design this document can distract the reader from the content. This is especially true for background images. Remember, there really isn't any way to design a resume in a way that makes it so fancy that a hiring manager would be convinced to interview you. As you look at these options, take stock of which one makes you feel the most focused on the content and which one makes you feel most distracted. And if someone does want to print your resume, a dark background is going to use up a lot of ink. Any graphical elements in your resume can also interfere with applicant tracking software that companies use to scan for the keywords in your document and look for a match with the job description. And so you definitely want to avoid that. Let's take a closer look at your resume now and highlight some best practices that you can use and some approaches to avoid. Your name should be the biggest text on the page. If you have an advanced degree, feel free to use it after your name. Your contact information shouldn't really need to take up more than one line. It's okay to list your phone number and email without describing them as phone and email. No one's going to be confused anymore. And since no one will be writing to you, just including a city and state as your address, rather than your actual street address, is now a common practice. If you are going to include a LinkedIn URL, which has its pros and cons, make sure that you've customized it. And use your spacing strategically as you work on your resume, especially if you're trying to condense a lot of information down to a single page. A section like this that takes 6 lines and a lot of space can turn into a more efficient version like this, which only uses 3 lines of text with more efficient spacing. And the bolding in the bottom example emphasizes the most important information. You should also make sure that you have nice, consistent spacing throughout your document. Remember, we are going for that summer breezy tree-lined avenue look, not a hard walk through the swamp look. Use your formatting to draw the reader's attention to the different sections in your resume that highlight your relevant experiences. Having larger spaces between the main sections and smaller spaces within each section often works well. It doesn't really matter if you use lots of punctuation in a resume or not. Just make sure you are consistent with whatever approach you do use. Not many people will spot inconsistencies, but if they do, they will have evidence that you don't have great attention to detail. The formatting of a resume should always make it easier to see and understand the content. Consider these approaches in terms of listing skills in a resume. One highlights the icons and logos associated with the programs, and the other uses the keywords themselves. The one on the left was developed to make the resume look more interesting, but it doesn't actually make the content any easier to see or more meaningful, especially if the reader is less familiar with what these icons represent. The graphical elements on the left also wouldn't be seen as keywords by applicant tracking software, and so won't count in terms of how well your resume matches the job description. Also, avoid using the expertise scale on the left-hand side. This is very subjective and tends to do a better job of showing what you are not good at rather than showing what you are good at. Think about your own school report cards. If you've got one C grade and everything else was an A grade, which one stood out to your family the most? After a while, it will become harder and harder for you to spot mistakes in your resume. Your brain will start skimming over what you have written, so we encourage you to set up an appointment at Career Services through Handshake for a resume review. We are more than happy to give you feedback to ensure that you have consistent, error-free formatting. You will want to stop by our website and take a look at more of the resources that we have on resumes, and use some of the online tools to help you craft a version that employers are excited to see. You can see some of the most relevant ones in the description below this video. Don't forget to email me if you have a quick question about anything covered in this video, and if you haven't already watched part 1 of this video mini-series on best practices for tailoring your resume content, then feel free to take a look at this next.